How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
It's hot, like, just on the live, kind of, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He went,
Oh.
mm.
Yeah, no. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Okay.
You're gonna compact me. Good luck with that.
Yeah, like, what? What are we doing here?
There you go, sir.
Is Caitlin not coming?
Caitlin was not feeling up to it.
Oh dear.
So it's the three of you.
Oh yeah.
Do we have quorum?
We do. We have a quorum with you three.
Oh, it's
Because
three?
there's five, because the sixth was just an alternate.
Well, is there a script that I need to go by?
Well, that's what I'm looking for.
It's been a day.
Yeah, I bet.
Called in and not
I
coming.
mean, I can wing the first part of it, but
I
Okay.
told Caitlin something. Feel free to come on. It's getting close. It's getting scary.
Mark, you got the gavel, man. You have to sit there, right in the middle.
so is there some sort of script I need to follow?
So are you gavel man?
Let me send.
He's
Got
co.
like nose go?
He's co.
Oh,
He wanted it.
go.
Yeah.
Go.
Slide that down, I guess. Do I actually have to use that? or
I
is
don't
it
know.
just
It's symbolic.
I feel like it's dangerous to sit this close, is it?
All right.
God, we can do it with three, huh?
Do you want me
Do you have the packet available? So I think there's prompt.
Well, that's what I'm
Well, there's
hoping,
the one
because
for
I,
audience participation, but is the rest of it there for when I have to announce the individual?
Right here. No, just kidding. I think Angela's looking for it for you too. Could have sworn.
Not toward the end where the
There we go. I
signature.
got it. Did you find it? Where is it?
yay.
I'll dissolve it.
Mark, I'm going, should I email it to you? Is that?
Sure.
Was it under handbook?
Are you able to print mine?
It was in handbook. And. Do you want me to? Mandy, would you print her packet?
I have no computer or anything, like,
Yes. Do you want the entire packet?
I just want the prompts. I've read through it and everything, and we'll have the visual, but I just want to be able to make sure I can read the,
Separately, or do you? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Are they separate on your end? Okay. They're just all in their own folders.
Rockstar.
Got two, three more. Are they in the packet or the folders? I figured the easiest way to grab them was just to get them from my files. And are they printing under you?
My email doesn't want to open up on the computer. Right. Angela, you want me to start running it? You want me to start?
Yeah, let me get these resolutions.
I'm sorry. Whoops.
So she'll have to go get them off the printer. and
Okay.
come back. So it'll probably be
Do you want me to
sometime-
run back there? I can get them.
She has to use her badge.
Oh, Mandy, I'm sorry. You're okay.
If I'd known we were gonna have awkward silences, I would have stayed home and talked to my wife.
What?
Nothing.
Oh.
Didn't say it. We're not being recorded, right?
For the meeting. Oh. Can you get anywhere that way? So we'll be sending out a calendar invite for joint work sessions with the city council in June and July for going over the land use code, because they wanted to do it together, which I think is good. It was nice to have this first one, like we did last time with them last week, but they said, let's meet all together at least twice. They'll do an intro, and then we'll have two in-depth ones. So you can come to the intro or not, but the in-depth ones purely.
How flexible are they? How flexible are they? June is extremely busy for me.
The intro is on June 6th, and then and that's the procedure day. And then it's June 20th and June 18th. The first one, the June 20th, is non-residential design standards, landscape standards. And then July 18th is residential. I'll send out to you. Calendar invites. If you can ask me straight.
Yep.
If not, we'll just.
Okay.
You're a godsend. Thank you. Look, you even put a staple in it. Jeez.
We're fancy. All right, Mark, we can start.
Okay. All right, welcome to the May 25th public hearing of the Evans Planning Commission. Let's call this meeting to order. My name is Mark Leclerc. I'm the chairperson, or assistant chairperson of the Planning Commission. Thank you for attending tonight. Tonight's agenda is available on the city's website. We will announce what is happening next throughout the meeting. Thing? Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Roll call? You can go to roll call.
Okay, can we get a roll call?
Yes, Chair. Caitlin Myers. Mark Leclerc.
Present.
David Woolman.
Here?
Sheila Ann Farley. Beth Campbell.
Here.
And then
Thank you. So our first item of business is the approval for agenda of tonight's meeting. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda?
Do I have a second?
A second?
Let's have a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
You're opposed?
No, you looked at me for a while. I didn't know if you wanted I didn't say aye.
I did.
You know.
I
So
said aye.
usually, well, it doesn't matter. Okay.
So, motion passes. So,
Is it audience participation?
tonight's agenda includes the approval of the 1/24/2023 and the 3/28/2023 Planning Commission meeting minutes, which we've just done. We have public hearing items. The zoning amendment from the C3 and C1 zone districts to the C3 and R3 zone districts for the certain property located on the southeast corner of 37th Street and 47th Avenue. Third on the agenda is zoning amendment from the I zone district to the I3 zone district for certain property located at 4330, 4320, 4310, and 4300 Valmont Street, 1410, 1400, and 1340 43rd Street, and 4321, 4327, and 4329 Brentner Road, known as the H&V Farms Incorporated property. We have a special use permit for a recycling center for certain property located at 4327 Brantner Road. There is a special use permit for outdoor storage in excess of 10% lot coverage, 30% in the I1 zone district for a certain property located at the 1280 Brantner Road, known as the McConnell Spaeth property. And finally, we have the special use permit for mini storage for a certain property located at approximately 560 feet east of 35th Avenue and approximately 280 feet south of the 37th Street, known as the Landmark Self-Storage. For each item, we'll have a staff presentation of the facts of the application and the staff's analysis of how the application meets or does not meet our municipal code. Following that will be an applicant presentation, which will explain their ideas and proposed plans. We ask that you listen to each of these presentations carefully, because after the presentations, you will have a chance to ask questions or make comments about the application. Whether you're in favor of the project or opposed to it, you are welcome to speak after the project presentations have been made.
You ready?
Staff, we're ready to hear your presentation on zoning amendment from C3 and C1 zone districts.
Angela Snyder, Community Development. The first case before you this evening is a request for a zoning amendment from Vector Development. They own the C-shaped property east of Arrowhead Drive, just south of 37th Street. The property is currently zoned C3 on the top half and C1 on the bottom half. This contemplates commercial uses all the way around, all along the Ashcroft Draw and backing up to the Arrowhead and Hill and Park subdivisions, residential subdivisions. This has not proved marketable to the developers who would prefer to keep the commercial component as proposed here on the north portion of the property, and then to allow residential development on this southern portion of the property. The multifamily Saddleback development is just north of this property on 37th, to get an idea of where we're at in space. So the applicant has requested to keep the commercial element along the major arterial which is also what the city planning, what we would also agree as an advisable option. The applicant proposes the remainder of the property R3. The R3 allows for single-family homes, duplexes, townhouses, and multifamily dwellings. So the proposal will allow residential uses to back along the Ashcroft Draw Trail, which is set to go down this way, where commercial development really isn't feasible or it may be even not desirable. The applicant has most recently completed a townhouse development in Greeley, just south of Center Place and west of Greeley West High School, which is shown in concept here to get an idea of some of the things that they have done. There are 9 review criteria for a zoning amendment. So the first one is that a need exists for the proposal. Obviously, or at least obviously to the landowner, the way it's zoned right now has not been working. And so they would like to change that. And then, let me get this other thing up here. The next criteria, here I shortened them. The next criteria says the particular parcel of ground is indeed the correct site for the proposed development. The future land use map designates this area for commercial and residential urban neighborhood uses. So it's pretty mixed. So as staff, we feel that this is in line with the proposed C3 and R3 uses. The next 2 criteria go together, that there's an error in the original zoning or there have been significant changes to the area that warrant a change of zone. The original zoning does not match the market demand for development. And also residential development can better benefit from the direct access to the Ashcroft Draw Trail and the associated open space around it. Number 5 criteria, adequate circulation exists and traffic movement would not be impeded by development. The zoning amendment is a neutral request since the site was already zoned commercial. The City of Evans is installing a roundabout that will provide access to the property from Arrowhead Drive. The property also abuts the proposed Prairie View Drive extension on this east side of the property right here that will come around the corner. The associated replat also provides a right-of-way for a third access to the site directly from 37th Street that lines up with Tuscan Way. This access may require limited movement. A review of traffic will be part of the site planning process when the site is developed. So staff does find that the traffic and circulation is adequate for this change of zone request. The next criteria is that additional municipal service costs will not be incurred, which the city is not prepared to meet. The request will not result in an increase in estimated service costs. It only changes the distribution from all commercial to a residential component. Water and sewer service are available to the property now, and the property also has water rights, which will provide non-potable water to future development. Number 7, there are minimal environmental impacts, or the impacts can be mitigated. The request for residential uses will provide for better protection of the riparian corridor associated with the Ashcroft Draw, which can be incorporated into the dedication of open space that comes with residential development. And then 8, consistency with the comprehensive plan. The master plan designates this area for commercial and residential urban neighborhood uses, as I said before, which is in line with C3 and R3 request. And lastly, that there are adequate waste and sewage disposal, water, schools, parks, and recreation in the area. The city is anticipating growth on this west side. Sewer services are being expanded right now as we speak. The school district is also reviewing this area for long-term school expansion plans on either side of the property. And any new development will have to provide for regional and neighborhood parks, which may take the form of land dedication or cash in lieu. And other impact fees that address services are imposed at building stage. So That being said, staff does find that the request meets all 9 of the review criteria and recommends that you would recommend approval to the City Council on this subject. The applicant is present and I'm happy to answer any questions. So would you like
Yeah,
to
I
hear
couldn't
from
hear
the,
you.
would you like to hear from the applicant?
Yes.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Colin Bowman from Vector Development. I'm here representing my family business with my brother and my father. We are local from Loveland. We've been operating under the structure for about 4 years, and as staff has shown, we've primarily been doing luxury and townhomes in West Greeley on 2 separate parcels. Obviously, we like the growth in the area and would like to better service that growth and provide some good housing options over here, as well as potentially service the expansion of that corridor. And past that, I don't really have anything to add past what staff has presented, but we would look forward to hopefully bringing some nice housing to the area.
I had a question. Are we questioning yet?
I was about to announce that.
Oh, okay, go for it.
So if you have questions,
I do. My question is, first of all, thank you for coming tonight and presenting. My question has to do with the open space park, and as I'm reading this, I'm thinking that that's kind of more of an afterthought, and this isn't something that is being planned for. Is that part of? Do you have dedicated areas set aside for that, or?
At this time, we're looking for the rezone, which means when we go to site plan, is
Okay.
when we would plan on dedicating that land or developing our own pocket parks in
Okay.
those neighborhoods to service, and that would just be commiserate with whatever planning
Okay.
requires
Zoning.
of us. But on this large of a parcel, we fully expect and understand that there will be pocket parks dedication or cash in lieu or some combination of
Okay.
required.
Well, because of that area, with that area and the the trail, the proposed trail, and that being a wetland area close to that, I'm curious. So.
Yeah, we certainly will get that to that with site planning.
Okay.
And I do think it lends itself very well, given the shape of the property to expand that parks feel back closer to the draw.
Okay.
are there any other questions from the planning commissioners? We're ready for public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to come up and speak about the application or ask questions about it? No. Okay. This public hearing is now closed, and the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to what they've heard during public testimony. Okay. So, any further staff comments?
I have nothing to add.
So I have a question of staff, which, I mean, I don't know. As far as what is involved in a commercial 1 zone, what kind of things do you usually see?
Commercial in C1 is a neighborhood commercial zone district, so you generally see small retail that would benefit a neighborhood in the vicinity. So like your convenience stores, maybe little coffee shops, that kind of thing.
And that whole tract of land was designated as.
Yes, it's unusual to see something like that, especially not adjacent to the arterial road. Traditionally, you'll see a residential section where they'll take the corners and make them like the neighborhood commercial blocks where those intersection roads are. So this is really unique in that there's no intersection here. I wasn't here when they did it, so I don't know what the thought was, but it doesn't seem to me to make sense to have it backing the draw like that.
So just to get a little bit of bearing too, the PUD that we see is the one that is that recently approved?
Correct. Yeah, this one right up here is the PUD that you approved for the R3 uses with the Saddleback at Tuscany.
Uh-huh.
So that's right there. And then, of course, this is the Tuscany development. And then this right here is Liberty Draw.
And right now, it's 42nd that would dead end at is that an R3 zoning?
Yeah, so 42nd comes right here and follows, well, I guess it's a little bit higher than that, but it follows this line and through the Liberty Draw development, and then it starts curving up right here and curves up right along the edge of that property as proposed right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, do you have discussion between each other?
No.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion on this matter. Is there a, okay, concerning, oh dear. I think the zoning
Yeah, you
amendment
don't have to
from
read it.
C3 and C1 zone districts to the C3 and R3 zone districts from certain property located on the southwest corner of 37th Street and 47th Avenue. Is there a motion to vote?
So Beth, I think I couldn't find the prompts in the packet.
I can't either.
The normal, like numbered,
I was hoping you had them.
I've been looking for it, and I thought maybe that's why you asked those to be printed out. So I don't know that we have an official
Yeah,
in the packet, the numbers to make an approval motion.
So can
It
we
should
use
be-
this?
this one is resolution. It should be in the staff report. I know the packet was all together this time and not broken out, but it would be in the staff report, the first one, if your PDF is tagged. So the PC resolution is 2023-05. So the motion would be, I move to approve resolution 2023-05, recommending approval of the special use permit for, oh boy, not that one. Oh, let me get on the right one.
In the staff report.
So,
Let me get the right one here.
paper?
It's
No, I don't have the.
It's 2023-02, and I can read it if you'd like, and then you could just say, I motion what
Yes,
she just said.
yes.
So I'll read it out.
I'll motion and then you second.
Okay,
We'll
let me
get
wait
this
till it
done.
comes up and I get the right one.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we're having a lot of technical difficulties this time, so I do
Some.
apologize. So the motion would be, I move to approve Resolution 2023-02 to recommend approval of the zoning amendment from C3 and C1 to C3 and R3 for certain property located on the southeast corner of 37th Street and 47th Avenue.
I
What'd she
motion
say?
what Angela said.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's all you have to say.
Okay,
motion what
and I
Angela said.
second that.
We have a vote. All in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. So do we actually have,
So then the next,
are they labeled at all? in
so
here?
so you could say the next agenda item is the, thank you.
Yeah, so they're right here.
Okay,
So you just gotta kind of piece it together.
Yeah.
So you'd say this, and then you'd include these. It's just broken up a little bit more.
okay. Our second agenda is resolution number 2023-03. A resolution recommending approval with conditions, a special use permit for outdoor storage in excess of 10%, and lot coverage 30% in the I-1 zone district for certain property located at 1280 Brantner Road, also referred to as the McConnell Spaeth property.
So just to confirm, we're jumping on the agenda to item number 5.
I think he's 03. I'm looking at 04 as the next one.
Is this it? That's it, I think.
Okay, my apologies. Our second item is resolution number 2023-04, a resolution recommending approval of a zoning amendment from the I-1 zone district to I-3 zone district for certain property located at 4330, 4320, 4310, and 4300 Valmont Street, 1410, 1400, and 1340 43rd Street, and 4321, 4327, and 4329 Brantner Road.
So this second zoning amendment of the evening is for several properties in the Evans Industrial Park owned by H&V Farms. The industrial park is predominantly zoned I-1, which does not match the pre-existing heavy industrial uses that are located there for the most part. So the request is, not surprisingly, for I-3 zoning. The request was processed in conjunction with 3 other cases: a replat to adjust the lot lines, a special use permit for a recycling center for one of the new lots, which will be the next item on the agenda, and a site plan for commercial parking to cover the remainder of the property. The property is currently being used for commercial truck parking and milk depackaging. The applicant is requesting to add a trash compactor to the site as part of the special use permit application, which will reduce the number of roll-off dumpsters from 4 per week to 1 per week. And the expansion of this recycling center triggered, or the existence of the recycling center, depending on your interpretation, triggered the need to bring the zoning of the property into compliance with the current land use code. So a recycling center is only allowed in the I-3 zone district, and with a special use permit on top of that. And so with the I-1 zoning right now, it's not a place where you can have a recycling center. So that's why you're seeing a change of zone and a special use permit request. So they've requested to change the zone on all of the property to I-3 to match the area. And I'm gonna skip, maybe it's on the special use permit. It's on the special use permit. So there are 7 of the, so there are the same 9 criteria for a change of zone that we saw before in the previous application. And let's go through those. The first one is that a need exists for the proposal. The applicant would like to keep and expand their recycling center, which requires I-3 zoning. Number 2, a particular parcel of ground is indeed the correct site for the proposed development. The property is located within the Evans Industrial Park, which is the correct site for industrial development. Numbers 3 and 4 that go together: was there an error in the original zoning, or has there been significant changes in the area? I would argue that there was an error in the original zoning of that industrial park, as there are heavy industrial uses all throughout that industrial park, and that the I-1 zone district itself is faulty. I-3 classification better represents the existing use of property in the industrial park. Number 5 is that adequate circulation exists and traffic movement would not be impeded by the development. There's no change to existing right-of-way associated with the zoning amendment. The property accesses onto already existing roads that are already used to this traffic, and there won't be any significant increase. Number 6 is that additional municipal service costs will not be incurred, which the city is not prepared to meet. The zoning amendment will not cause any additional municipal service costs to the city. Number 7, there are minimal environmental impacts, or those impacts will be mitigated. The site plan and special use permit processes that are associated with this change of zone did in fact include a review and mitigation of environmental impacts, including the placement of rain garden, enclosing, the milk depackaging, processing, and do address a lot of those concerns. So there's not a concern with this change of zone. Number 8, the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The application furthers several principles. It helps our local businesses expand and helps, and it's the best opportunity for their long-term success, which is one of our comprehensive plan goals. And then another one says that we want to value our agricultural resources and support those important industries into the future. This is an agricultural support service industry, and so we would want to support that based on our master plan. And number 9, there is adequate waste and sewage disposal, water, schools, parks, and all those other things. The site is served by municipal water and sanitary sewer. Stormwater will flow to a regional detention pond, and there are no impacts to schools or parks. So, that being said, staff does recommend approval of the changes of the zoning amendment request, and the applicant is present and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
No, not on this one. No.
Okay, well, the applicant, we're ready to hear your presentation.
So good evening, I'm Kelsey Bruxford, a land planner with Ag Professionals. We're at 3050 67th Avenue in Greeley, and I'm representing H&V Farms tonight. And I'll wait for my slides to get pulled up. There we go. So we are requesting a zoning amendment from the I-1 to the I-3 zone district. And as Angela said, the site is located in the Evans Industrial Park on the northwest corner of Brantner Road and 43rd Street. That one got rotated. There are 2 existing shops on the site. They were built in 1979. The rest of the site is primarily gravel truck parking. And this is a look at the Evans overall zoning map. It is in an industrial area. It was annexed into the city of Evans by the Evans Industrial Park subdivision in 1975. And so a little background as to how we got to this zoning request. In 2021, H&V Farms was renting the property, and they approached the city for an electrical permit for a trash compactor to crush their milk cartons and reduce the number of roll-off dumpsters. They were not aware that the site didn't already have entitlements for the industrial uses in the park. Staff felt that the trash compactor met the definition of a recycling center, which is only permitted in the I-3 zone district. So this is the path that staff required H&V Farms to go through for the different land uses. And we developed the recommended applications, and H&V Farms purchased the property in 2022. So the zoning request was submitted in conjunction with an administrative minor replat, a special use permit, which is the next case on your agenda, and an administrative site plan review. The minor replat adjusts the lot boundaries to match the SUP and SPR permit boundaries. The SUP is for a milk depackaging use in the existing building, and the SPR is for a truck parking lot. This is a more complicated path than I think our client wished to go through initially, but at this point they've invested a lot of time and money and want to see it through. We do believe the request is approvable and it meets all criteria for a rezone. So for reference, this shows the site plan review and special use permit areas. This is the minor replat. Lot 34 will be expanded to contain the SUP. And currently, the depackaging operations are occurring in a modified box trailer. With the SUP, the operations will be relocated into a portion of the existing shop. For the depackaging use, H&V Farms is contracted with Dairy Farmers of America to pick up unsellable carton milk at their plant in Denver. The milk has exceeded its use-by date for distribution, but it's still a viable livestock feedstock. So milk is removed from the cartons in Evans, transferred into a milk truck, and then delivered to a calf ranch in Wiggins. And this is the operations diagram that we presented at the pre-app meeting in 2021. It looks complicated, but it's really pretty simple. A truck comes in with milk crates. 2 employees unload the crates by hand, put the cartons in the crusher, which we call the depackager there. The crusher releases the milk. The milk gets captured and hosed into the milk truck. The crusher spills out the cartons and dumps them in the trash. And the requested trash compactor would reduce the number of roll-off dumpsters from 4 per week to 1 per week. And again, as staff felt this met the definition of a recycling center, which is only permitted in the I3 zone district. That's the reason behind the zoning request tonight. And this is an example of what the trash compactor is. It's not a drop-off site. It's not open to the general public. It's not a solid waste site, and it does not require any other environmental state permits to operate. So thanks for allowing me to give a little background on that. For the zoning request, this is the current zoning map. This site is in the Evans Industrial Park and is I-1 currently. So it's surrounded by light, medium, and heavy industrial and commercial uses. We do feel I-3 is appropriate. The request does meet the approval criteria for a zoning amendment, which the next few slides cover. It is in the interest of the city to encourage the retention of existing businesses. It is the correct site. It is located in an industrial park, and it's close to Highway 85. The property is adequately sized. And as staff mentioned, the designation of zoning as light industrial doesn't necessarily match the neighborhood. There is adequate traffic circulation. There are existing access easements, and an additional easement will be dedicated with the minor replat. And as the industrial park is already developed, the zoning amendment does not alter current traffic patterns. Approval of the zoning and subsequent SUP will provide for adequate protection of public health, safety, and welfare. Mitigation of environmental impacts is contingent on approval of the land entitlements and includes the reduction in dumpsters, the relocation of the depackaging uses into the building, the installation of a concrete pad to protect against spills. These improvements have all been on hold while we've been in the permitting review process. Adherence to development standards established for zoning and the proposed uses is a requirement of the land use process. The zoning amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's there in the purple, which is slated for industrial use. It's also consistent with the development guidelines of the US 85 Overlay District Master Plan. It's near the 85 corridor, but outside of the overlay area. It's not visible from 85, and it's adequately buffered from the highway. The master plan supports the improvement of properties that are visible along the 85 corridor to develop the gateway of Evans. For uses that don't meet the overlay land use categories, the plan encourages those uses to be located outside of that boundary. So industrial uses that are near to but not directly on the highway are supported. There is existing Evans water and sanitary sewer service. The site is served by Excel and Atmos, and there's no additional cost generated to the city. So we do believe that we've met the requirements for a zoning amendment and would respectfully ask for a recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant?
No.
I do. When you, what kind of volume are we, you said the service is one cow feed operation, is that?
A calf ranch.
A calf ranch,
Megan's. Mhm.
okay.
And I'll go in more details in the SUP in my next presentation, but
Okay.
it's 2 milk trucks a week come in, and then, 4 semi-trucks total a week, and 2 milk trucks go out.
Okay, 4 and 2 out.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
I'll stay standing.
How is this going to impact the surrounding neighborhoods? Is there going to be excessive smell from the depackaging waste?
No, it will be moved into the building. So the modified box trailer is a temporary solution because the building permits won't be permitted until the land uses line up. So there's a little bit of spillage that staff has noted on the ground, and they're doing their best to contain it. But with the relocation of it into the building, there should be no offsite impact to that.
And the roll-offs will also be outside?
Yes, but they will be screened.
Thank you. We are ready for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this? No? Okay. Public testimony is now closed. There's nothing to rebut, so staff, any further questions or comments?
No.
Planning commissioners will now discuss this.
So upon hearing more about this
In the
and
next-
understanding it a little bit better, is it all right if I ask Angela a few more questions
Oh, absolutely.
before we discuss it?
Yeah,
more?
no, absolutely.
Okay. So this seems like it's being called a recycling facility, but they're not really recycling.
They're not recycling according to the state's definition of recycling. They're recycling according to the City of Evans' definition of recycling, which is how the direction at the time was to do the special use permit. The City of Evans definition, which is in my presentation for the next the next item on the agenda, has that definition for you, and it's very broad. It says crushing, separating, taking something in and redistributing it. It's pretty broad, so I can see why previous administration directed the applicant that it was a recycling center. I also see that it's minor in nature and could see why someone might think it wasn't. I do see how it fits into that definition and why they were asked to do a special use permit application.
Okay. Rezoning all of these to I3, future use of the property. Surrounding properties are industrial 1, light industrial.
Right.
Because so we have to approve, once it's rezoned, it's rezoned. There's going to be a special use permit application that if approved and somebody goes to use the I3 zoning, the land, afterwards, they need to resubmit an application anyway. So somebody, they can't release their property in the future and something else, and it's small, but let's say a gravel pit, can't go in there. And that in itself requires a special use. So by rezoning to I3 to heavy industrial use, could you see any possible ramifications for unwanted heavy industrial use in the future?
Right. As the code is written right now, there honestly isn't that much difference in the Evans Code. Industrial uses facility is allowed in all 3, and there's no level of degree of what makes something heavy. What you can do in the I3 that you can't do in the I1 is the gravel mine, the transloading facility, a recycling center, or a jail, or a junkyard. like a commercial junkyard, which would require also a special use permit.
So,
What would happen, if there is a vesting, whenever city council approves a site-specific development plan, that becomes a vested property right. So what could happen is that the property owner could sell to someone else, and they could operate a recycling center, like an actual CDPHE-approved recycling center, because that would be an allowed use on that property under the special use permit. But anything else would have to go back through the site planning or the special use permitting process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I had one question also before this is already pasteurized, out-of-date milk that is being unpackaged and then dumped into the tankers and taken to the.
That's correct. It's taken out of cartons that
Okay.
were going to be on the way to
Okay.
like a grocery store.
Okay. No raw milk. All right. That answers my question.
Okay.
So now we can discuss among each other.
So now it's a motion.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Or
Yes.
discussion.
It sounds unnerving that they had to go through this process.
Absolutely.
To increase the efficiency of they're not doing anything different.
Yeah. No. And in fact, they're trying to improve in a lot of ways. And I don't understand. We shouldn't have to go through this.
I mean, it's like Angela said, it's in the definitions and it's in
Right.
old code.
Right. And if
we're
any,
working on improving that, right? So we'll get there maybe, but I don't see any reason why we should. I mean,
no, not with.
they're not going to put a gravel mine in there.
If you.
Maybe they'll put an actual recycling plant in there in the future, and that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. So in my head, and correct me if I'm understanding this incorrectly, in my head, if you wanted to do something that was more traditional, heavy industrial, you still have to get a special use permit.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Correct? If we go
You
to.
wouldn't need a special use permit unless it falls under one of the definitions of something that's called out as requiring a special use permit.
But the differences in at least right now in the zoning
Right,
code of
there's
I-1
none.
to I-3 isn't very well distinguished is what she was saying. So it's like what goes into I-3 now may just as well be what did I say? You know what I'm saying?
Right, I do. And that's what I'm saying is there isn't much difference. I mean, one is the same more or less. However, if you want to step beyond what I'm thinking in my head as more heavy industrial, then you still have to come back and say, hey, can I do this?
Well, it depends. And that's just if it falls within the special use permit. Because if it's rezoned into I-3, and it's not a special use requirement as defined in our code, then they can use it for whatever industrial 3 use they'd like.
Yeah.
But you think about what might go in there, like, well, either way, this is not that the applicants, they've been operating here.
No, I understand. I'm looking more towards the
Same.
future. Yeah, and I'm just wondering if
Who knows
this
how
isn't.
it's a family-run business, who knows how long they're gonna be
Right, and if this is
transferring
gonna
the milk
turn
to the
around.
cows, how long that's gonna be sustainable, it's just as likely that this could be resold.
Right. But,
So what's the consequences for them if we say we would not recommend approval?
big. I think, yeah.
I mean, they'd leave
No, absolutely. That's what I mean.
if they could. I don't know
Right.
what that would mean, but what does that mean to us?
A lot. Okay. My concern is that we're leaving a door open.
Same?
However, I'm banking on other regulations to come in and stop us.
So we can talk about this real quick too. Think about something scary industrial,
Yeah,
heavy industrial that you don't want. And you think about the property itself surrounded by roads,
well, that's what I'm saying, the environmental.
new regulations, new environmental regulations, the containment. Like if there's something was heavy to go in there after they were to leave,
Mm-hmm,
they're not gonna let.
right,
It's not gonna be, every time we upgrade this industrial area of Evans, things get
better.
better and
Yeah.
better and better.
No, I would agree. I would agree. I hate those just
It does seem like an
Yeah.
open door,
gray.
and your change from I-1 to I-3 seems like a big jump.
Uh-huh.
This is what's required with our code. This is what they put their money into doing. It's like,
Right.
if there's a problem in the future, I mean, we have to hope that the community would make sure that it's done right.
I have a question then, wastewater. So when, for instance, somebody else wanted to come in, they go to a plastics, I don't know, molding, whatever. Do we have other steps that we can take to put the brakes on? Something that might be affecting our wastewater treatment, or, because we contract with Greeley, correct?
We actually,
Right
if,
now.
if I may ask.
Yeah.
Answer. Evans handles their own wastewater and contracts with Greeley for the potable domestic water.
Mm-hmm,
And then we also have our storm sewer system, which I'm assuming you're also interested in,
Yeah.
in how that wastewater handles. So the industrial park is currently in the MS4 area. So it has to, MS4, see if I can say it, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. I think that was
Right.
4 S's. And that's regulated by the state pretty strictly.
okay, that's where the break is.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to find. So the state, with our municipal water,
So
our storm, the state regulates that. So if you're dropping into Evans storm, we still have to meet state, which would, okay,
right,
there's a break right
on,
there.
on this property in, I believe, or maybe it's the next one, but it often involves the addition of water quality features.
Mhm.
Even if they're already an approved site, but they don't have building permits yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the state, when they came in with that regulation, they said, no matter what, if you're doing anything to that property, it has to comply with MS4.
Right, and those improvements to that property are not being made. Those,
They are actually, but as part of the special use
okay.
permit application.
No.
But yes,
Okay,
the MS4
okay.
is being addressed.
Okay,
Yeah.
they don't exist now.
Right,
They're part of the improvement,
yes,
which is why I'm confused.
yes.
I rest my case. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move to approve Resolution 2304 to recommend approval of the zoning amendment from the I-1 to the I-3 zone district for the H&B Farms property.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and now we're on to 2305, is that correct?
Yeah, it's
Okay. And I'll just ask for forgiveness for my clumsiness tonight.
okay.
You're doing good.
You are. We're missing people.
So our next item on the agenda is special use permit for
Mini storage.
outdoor storage in excess of 10% of the lot coverage. Oh,
This is 03, just so you know.
03.
No, this is
It's
special use permit. That's the wrong one.
Isn't
You're
that
probably
zero?
right, it's a 05.
Pardon me?
That's the storage, so that's,
Yeah, I thought it went on.
so, no, I think you were right.
This
It's
one's,
06. It's a special use permit for the recycling center. That's not it. That's the last one.
last slide back for a moment?
Hmm?
Could I have the last slide back for a moment for that verbiage? So, number 4. A special use permit for recycling center for certain property located at 4327 Brantner Road for resolution number 2023-05. Staff, do you have a presentation?
So this request is for a special use permit that we previously discussed in the case before this. The applicant, H&B Farms, would like to improve and expand their milk depackaging center. An approval of this special use permit will ensure that the site comes into compliance with current zoning and standards. While a milk packaging, this is the proposed site plan with the office parking in the front along Brantner here, and then places for the trucks to come in and load back here, and then the facility, the existing building is right here. There's the landscape plan for along Brantner to add some greenery, and they'll also be improving the parking paving here in the front for the office parking. So a recycling center, according to our code, means a use involving the collection and processing of recyclable materials for shipment or reuse. It's baling, compacting, flattening, grinding, crushing, mechanical sorting, shredding, melting, cleaning, and remanufacturing. So a recycling center is only allowed in the I3 zone district and requires a special use permit, which is why this request is before you today, as they were directed back in 2021. There are 7 criteria for a special approval of a special use permit, and some of their definitions are long, so I shortened them. So the first one is health, safety, and welfare. We believe that the development standards in our review take this into account, such as MS4 providing for the health, making sure that all of any milk that doesn't make it into the truck gets dealt with properly for waste, and that those cartons are dealt with properly as well. Benefit to the city, no undue burden on the city. It only benefits us to have the site improved and to have the health concerns taken care of. It does not cost us anything more because the site's already there and they're already operating. Number 3, consistent with plans and compatible with the surrounding area. It's an industrial use in an industrial park, so there are really no concerns with that in this area. A noise, traffic, and other conditions. Again, it's just a few trucks a week in the industrial park. That's definitely acceptable traffic for that area. We're not asking for anything else. The site is suitable for the use, physically suitable. There were no concerns identified in the soil report or the geotechnical report submitted with the application. And then the traffic and parking are acceptable. The traffic, again, is same as number 4, is acceptable. Parking is required to be paved, which is why they're paving that office parking in the front. We did not require any paving of the back storage area. And avoids an over-concentration of similar uses. There are no other milk depackaging processing places in the industrial park, so I think we're avoiding an over-concentration. Staff does recommend approval of the special use permit request. The applicant is present, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have questions for Angela, just so you know. Before you move on to letting her speak again, you can ask any other
Yeah.
questions, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was next. Do any of the planning commissioners have questions for staff?
Thank you. I do. So kind of going back to this definition of recycling, is there any the way they did this they were put down this road it still doesn't seem appropriate. And I understand that we're following definitions and everything, but I wonder if there's any difference in the way this could have been handled in considering it as an agricultural operation.
There's definitely, I mean, other ways to look at it or can be negotiated. What I would recommend though is like this recycling center definition, like the industrial uses facility or some other definitions in our code right now are so overreaching that it's hard to get around. You could say, oh, cleaning something now requires a recycling center permit. So since we are going through a land use code update, I would highly recommend when we go through that zoning section that we take a hard look at some of these definitions and say a recycling center should be one as defined by CDPHE as a recycling center.
Yeah.
Great.
Because
And-
this would be more,
they're recycling milk, so maybe, but I can kind of see where the thought process went, but also, it's an agricultural support service business, which is probably the first thing that comes to mind. So.
And then one other question, in a special use permit, why is the environmental standard not a consideration, or does that fit in within the criteria somewhere else?
So right now, the way the criteria is written is also something that I would like to improve. I think it's a little redundant in some areas and maybe lacking in others. We tend to look at the environmental concerns under health, safety, and welfare, number one.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a couple questions. As far as the health and safety of this, it noted that there's going to be melting and grinding of plastics. When they when they take the milk out of the containers, then I'm assuming they're plastic or paper containers?
I believe those containers that the milk comes in are just crushed. I don't believe they're melting anything.
Okay. It had mentioned up there that that's how they were gonna.
Oh, was it
It
melting?
mentioned up on the slide about melting and crushing and,
Oh, that's just the.
By definition.
yeah.
okay,
Is that
so,
what you're referring to?
yes.
Mhm.
So they will not be doing that? They'll just be crushing and
I believe the application.
disposing of the containers, okay.
Yeah, the application
have no
just
further
stated the
questions.
crushing. Yeah.
So
Ap-
one of my questions is, if we're going from a food grade, so a human consumption food grade product, and repackaging that, which is, we're not recycling it, we're downgrading it to a feed grade and repackaging that, but we're calling that recycling and not animal feed or anything like that. We need to go back to those definitions. I'm going to stop right there. Okay. Given what we have, it fits. Done. Okay.
We need to.
Any further questions of
No.
staff? Applicant, do you have a presentation?
I
Call
do.
the applicant.
So Kelsey Brooks for Ag Professionals, 3050 67th Avenue, Greeley, Colorado. And I just wanted to clarify a couple things before we got into the presentation. It's being permitted as a recycling center by definition, and we kind of talked about how that's perhaps not the best fit. That doesn't mean that they can do anything outside of what they're permitted to do. So the recycling permit does have parameters and development standards. So there's site plans for the improvement. There's going to be building permits for the use and development standards that they have to adhere to. So even if there's a vested right, somebody would have to come in and operate under the exact same conditions or come back to the city for an amendment. So there is checks and balances there. So we had the same kind of concern over the definition, but
Sure.
it doesn't permit just anything goes
Okay.
kind of recycling. The primary use is milk depackaging. We like the word depackaging because it's not recyclable by state definition. The secondary use that we added is truck parking because we won't be using the entirety of the building. So there's a couple bays that can be used for truck parking. And then there's offices in the building. And this is the boundary the SUP will take up on site. And then that's another look at where they're currently operating. And they would like to relocate into the existing shop. And the operations diagram again. So the unsellable carton milk is brought from the Denver DFA plant, and they're able to make use of the window between the use-by date and the point at which it spoils to make it available to a local farm instead of it being thrown away, so it is a beneficial use. The depackager only partly crushes the milk cartons to release it. It does not ball or melt or transform them. It just kind of crushes it so that it's open instead of them having to manually pour it out by hand. So with the trash compactor that we would like an electrical permit for, the cartons will be completely crushed so that the cartons will take up less space in the dumpsters. Oh no. The slides aren't translating very well.
It's the day.
So we are paving the parking area in front, adding landscaping, and because of the MS4 requirements, there will be a rain garden in our parking area to filter the water through before it leaves the site. So that's been vetted by engineering, and we have approval of our drainage report. So that was part of it. And we will be adding solid wood fencing to behind the shop so that the loading area and the dumpsters and everything won't be seen from Brantner Road. Okay, that one works. So that's our existing floor plan that shows the workshop. There's some storage rooms and office uses there. And this is our proposed floor plan. So the packaging area takes up 775 square feet of the 5,400 square foot building. And the remainder of the workshop will be used for truck parking. And this is the upgrades that they would like to make. That includes 2 new roll-up doors, a man door, a small loading dock. So trucks will pull up to the loading dock behind the building. The compactor and dumpster will be outside and will be screened with fencing. The compactor will be on a concrete pad to contain any spillage. And the dumpsters will be picked up when full. And for the use, the primary hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. There will be up to 3 employees on site at a given time. It is a family-run and family-staffed business. And then for the truck parking and office, primary hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And as the building will primarily be used for parking, no full-time or on-site employees are expected for the truck parking spot. There will be 6 weekly truck round trips for the depackaging use, 4 semi-trucks and 2 milk trucks, and 3 daily employee vehicle round trips. For the truck parking, there may be up to 5 daily round trips. So given the low traffic volumes, no off-site roadway improvements are triggered. And we did evaluate the turning radius for semi-trucks and the layout of the permit boundary. So with the minor replat, the lot will be expanded to fully contain the SUP. There are adequate utility services. And it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as the comp plan recognizes the importance of agricultural support industries. The location of the site is key to its success as a central point between Denver and Wiggins. And they live just outside of town, so it's the perfect spot for them. The request meets the approval criteria for an SUP. There are adequate provisions for health, safety, and welfare, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on that. The conditions of approval are adequate to address the potential impacts The site is physically suitable. The site plan complies with the applicable design standards, and we've gone through a pretty thorough redline review process prior to this hearing to ensure that. Existing traffic volumes are staying the same. Paved on-street parking will be added, and the use is compatible with the other uses in the area. So we do believe that we meet the criteria for an SUP, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you. This time we'll, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make comment on this. There's no one here wants to comment, so we will go ahead and close discussion. Commissioners, discuss this among yourselves. Anything to say?
No, other than we need to work on the definition of recycling center and some others, but I think
We've already rezoned it.
yeah, no,
Special use permit protects its use to only recycling, so if
Right,
we were
right.
to deny this, we would be,
no,
Doesn't
we
make
have
any
to
sense at all.
approve this. I know, I'm just back to the
Yeah.
recycling definition, that bugs me. So,
Yeah.
but, moving on.
okay?
No further discussion?
Mm-mm.
Okay. For the matter of resolution 2023-05, recommending conditional approval of a special use permit for recycling center for certain property located at 4327 Brentner Road. Do we have, I move to approve the resolution. Do we have anyone?
So you're asking for a motion,
I'm asking for a motion.
but the
to
way you
approve.
read it made it sound like you were making the motion, which is okay, I think.
absolutely don't know what
If
I'm
the,
doing.
if the vice chair makes a motion, somebody just needs to second it, right? So I second that motion.
Oh, is it appropriate for me to even make the motion?
Yeah,
We're good.
she said yes.
Okay.
I think it's okay.
I was
Maybe
gonna
if
leave
we
it.
could just say, do we have a
Tries to
motion
let
for the?
somebody else make it.
Honestly, in my head, that's what was being said.
Okay. That's all right.
Okay,
That's okay.
so should I do it again? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2023-05, recommending approval of the special use permit for a recycling center for a certain property located at 4327 Bratner Road.
Do we have a second?
Second.
At this time, we'll take the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Now we're at,
Lot coverage. Greater than 10%.
There you go.
okay. The next agenda item is for resolution number 2023-03, a resolution recommending approval with conditions of a special use permit for outdoor storage in excess of 10%, lot coverage 30% in the I-1 zone district for certain property located at 1280 Brantner Road, also referred to as the McConnell Spaeth property. Staff, do you have a presentation?
I do. So this special use permit request is across the street from the previous request. The applicants are Kyle McConnell and Brian Spaeth. And the property is outlined in blue here. The property is currently used as an industrial uses facility. So the reason that the special use permit is coming to you is because they would like to exceed the 10% allowed outdoor storage limitation. So they are requesting 30% outdoor storage coverage with this request. The site plan that accompanies this plan is already administratively approved and just waiting for the special use permit layer to be approved on top of it. And since there is outdoor storage on almost all the properties in this area, 30% doesn't seem to be out of line. And so staff does recommend approval of this request. The outdoor storage, through the site planning process, the outdoor storage was limited to areas of the property to ensure that fire trucks could still get into the property. That was important because the area had previously been covered in such a way that that was limited. And then the applicant has also, since they're going through a site planning process, got approved to, or I guess, yes, got approved to add a building here as well with paved parking for the building. And then it would just be an improved surface. So it would be Class 6 aggregate base. They would have to add some cattle guards in here to make sure that that aggregate did not get tracked onto Brantner, which is a paved road. That was the engineering department's request because it's just an outdoor storage area in here. That's why it wasn't required to be paved, and then paving for the actual parking for the office building. So landscaping also comes with site plans. So the landscaping here has some trees and shrubs along Brantner, which is the only right of way that it faces. So that's a little look at the landscaping. The 7 criteria here, the health, safety, and welfare, we do feel that the special use permit review and the development standards that we have address health, safety, and welfare. There were some MS4 concerns on this property as well, and that's been addressed with a rain garden and by asking the applicants to enclose any tanks that they may be storing, or at least providing secondary containment for those tanks in accordance with the state's MS4 regulations. Number 2, benefit to the city. It's a benefit because going through this process helps us improve our MS4 and allows them to store, but also keeps our water a little cleaner. Number 3, consistent with plans compatible with the surrounding area. There's outdoor storage on all of these lots in the industrial park, so it's very compatible. Number 4, the noise, traffic, or other concerns. They are operating already. They wanted to add the building and then exceed the outdoor storage. So staff didn't find any concerns with noise or traffic that needed to be mitigated through this other than the normal development standards, the normal nuisance code, exceedance limits for noise and other concerns. The site is physically suitable for the use. There were no concerns identified in the soil report submitted with the application. And traffic and parking are acceptable. The flow of traffic around the site was acceptable to the fire department. That's what they were originally concerned with. And then the parking with the paving on the top is also acceptable. The site plan also shows where on the property they can park and where they shouldn't, which is helpful. And then does this avoid an overconcentration? Well, that's a hard question. That's what the industrial park is for. So I would argue that putting industrial uses inside of an industrial area is not an overconcentration, but a benefit to the city. So staff does recommend conditional approval of this request. The condition that you'll see on the resolution is that the property shall comply with MS4. This would just be showing us that they have either properly contained the tanks that they have on site, or that the site is complying with MS4. And once we know that, then we can record their special use permit plan if it is approved by City Council. Other than that, staff recommends approval of the request.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I do in regards to the MS4, you're saying that will come after we approve the zoning and then the MS4 for the storage for water and sewer?
So this actually is a site plan request before you right now. It's not a change in zone at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke, yes.
Oh yeah, no, so we actually are addressing the MS4. The rain garden is right here.
Okay.
And there's a buffer along the southern edge of the property that will help address water quality concerns. And also the request that any of the storage that they have in here, that might be a tank or anything like that, that it be contained. That's an MS4 request as well. The South Platte River is actually really, really close to this property.
Right.
So that's why all of these properties have to make sure that their stormwater is going through some kind of filtration before it hits the river.
So what is being used here is the rain garden? Is that going to be what we're running water through before it's discharged to the river?
Yes, and then asking for containment of any other,
Okay,
anything that
okay.
requires it.
And what is going to be parked out here?
You could ask the applicant
Yeah.
themselves. I think it's a
Okay.
lot of oil field support service equipment, vehicles and things like that, but they can answer.
Okay.
Oh, does the applicant have a presentation?
They're here.
Yay.
Good evening. My name is Brian Spaeth. I currently reside at 33703 Siasconsa Road in Windsor. However, I've been in the Greeley-Evans area since about 2007. So,
I'm Kyle McConnell. I live at 1320 Brantner Road. I have the farm right next to this property.
so yeah, we feel that the proposal we submitted for this special use permit should be approved because it meets it coincides with surrounding areas. It is in the industrial park. Obviously, the farm across the way is doing the same thing. And then, yeah, we feel upon the approval and the improvements going into this property, it's going to drastically not only increase the aesthetics of the property, but of really the whole surrounding area as it is right now. So.
You all, commissioners, have any questions for the applicant?
Well, I know you do.
Well, I do, yeah. So when you talk about trucks and things that are being stored out there, can you describe that to me a little bit better? Are we talking semis? Are we talking tankers? Are we talking washed tankers? Are we talking like?
Currently, the use being right now is semis currently. They'll be out of there come the first of the month with hope of approval of this, so we can do construction. And then, yeah, in the future, our business or our background is oil and gas service, so it could be a decommissioned separator or pipe or something along that sort.
Okay. So is this equipment that no, I'm going to table that one for later. That's too confusing. Do you have a volume, an approximate volume of like number of like pieces of equipment, or I guess what I'm trying to get a sense of is that in an area that I dealt with in the past, when you're bringing in equipment to be parked, to store in between service, use and whatever, it's a lot of times it's not being washed, it's not being cleaned, it's leaking, there's rainwater, and my concern being that, especially with some of the volatiles, whether or not that rain garden is going to be adequate, and if we have a way to kind of monitor that with the river being that close, because it's almost a direct flow from the parking lot into the river. So that was one of my questions, but I don't know that this is the place to address that.
That is a great engineering question for our engineers that review the MS4.
Okay.
That is,
Okay.
maybe she knows.
Oh, hi.
We're not representing on the land use, but we did help with the engineering, so we did the
Okay.
drainage report and site plan, which is why I'm hanging out here. The requirement when you're that close to
Right.
cannot do detention that close to a floodplain.
Mhm.
That would violate those regulations, but you do have to meet MS4. So the rain garden is sized based on the state's urban design, urban drainage criteria, and that's how that gets designed. And then it's kind of hard to tell on this, but the dots kind of in the southern area there, that's native grass too. So the bottom of that rectangle is the actual filter strip, but everything else is graded towards that bottom filter strip and runs through a native grass area. So essentially the whole southern portion of it
Okay.
is the filter strip, and that's just put at the lowest point on site.
And there won't be any flushing of trailers or anything like that? We're not doing a washout on the side kind of thing? Okay. All right, that's it. I had.
No, thank you.
I actually have a question. You said this will improve the aesthetics of the property. How specifically are you achieving that? I mean, it sounds like you're going to put a lot of equipment out there. How is that aesthetically changing?
I mean, we're gonna landscape around the property right now. Unfortunately, the fence we have is falling down. It's gonna be a new fence, good-looking building. I mean,
It's going to be better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, when we
Thank you.
bought the property, it was essentially a junkyard.
Okay.
Had tons of old cars, just metal everywhere. Looked like people have been dumping in there for years. So we've got rid of all of that over the last few years, trying to clean it up.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further from us? Thank you. At this time, we'll entertain any public comment. There is none, so staff, would you like to, commissioners, would you like to go ahead and discuss this amongst yourselves?
Sure. Their use isn't changing.
No,
They're just
I
increasing the
understand.
storage.
Yeah.
I understand your concern and I
Right.
appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah, it's that location was really bad
Yeah.
before,
And
really
they've cleaned
bad.
it up.
Right, and there's still some questions as far as water quality, and that's not a thing. That's not part of our discussion. However, it does impact my thoughts, and it sounds like I need to move further upstream to answer those questions. This isn't the place to answer those. So
It sounds like the main concern would be, is the rain garden enough? And that's a question
Correct.
for an environmental expert.
right,
To say, is the rain garden doing everything that you'd hope that it does? And all they can say is that they're doing exactly what they've been
right.
recommended.
This is exactly how it's supposed to be engineered based on got it. And we're just
And
zoned.
20% increase in the lot, like,
No, it
it's
isn't.
incredibly reasonable,
Yes.
I think.
Wait, yeah, 20% being
Increase
30%
to
total.
10 to 30.
Right,
Mhm.
got it. Sorry, slow
okay.
math. Okay. That's everything that I can think of.
So, would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 2023-03, recommending approval of the special use permit for outdoor storage in excess of 10% lot coverage to 30% in the I-1 zone district for certain property located at 1280 Bratner Road.
Second.
Move for the vote. All in favor of approving the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. The motion carries.
Now we're on to 6.
Okay. So our final.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry.
So now we're at to 6, so now we're moving on to this last one, right?
Yes. Our last item is a special use permit for mini storage for certain property located at approximately 560 feet east of 35th Avenue and approximately 280 feet south of 37th Street, known as Landmark Self-Storage, for Resolution 2023-06. At this time, does staff have a presentation?
Yes. So the request before you is to use approximately 4 acres of Lot 5 of the Hunters Reserve Center for mini storage, which requires approval of a special use permit in the C3 High Intensity Zone District. The application is accompanied by a replat application to separate the proposal from the remainder of Lot 5, which is outlined in the thinner blue line. The property will be required to be accessed via right-of-way, which is going to be addressed through the replat and not part of the special use permit request. The proposal, Landmark Self-Storage, proposes up to 350 storage units of varying sizes. The facility is to be open between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. 7 days a week. The facility will have an office on the north end, right there. And the facility will be surrounded by a fence and a landscape buffer, which I think, there's a look at what the storage units look like. And let me show you the fence and the landscaping is here. You see some trees and bushes around buffering from these residential properties right here. And then up at the front as well. So I also wanted to show this because there are residences fairly close to this property right here. The applicant did submit, this is called a photometric plan, so it shows how many foot candles of light are bleeding off the property. And this is a pretty impressive photometric. I've seen a lot of these, and this is pretty impressive. They've got it almost to 0 all the way around. So this is a simulation of what the facility would look like at night. So you can see, like, from this side angle, there's almost no direct light leading off of it. So of course you would see the light if you're looking at it. You know, you would see the light at the facility, but the light from the facility is not shining at all directly on any of the surrounding property owner or properties, which was important to staff with that proximity of residential to the site. So we have those same, I went the wrong way. So there we go. There we go. So for our special use criteria for this site, we feel that the development standards and the modifications, you know, with the lighting the way it is and the fencing and landscaping to the residences will help with the health, safety, and welfare effect on the neighborhood, benefit to the city. This is a, you know, this is a commercial property, and getting it developed can't but help the city. The use of this property for mini storage in a commercial area, you know, the reason it requires a special use permit in commercial areas is because it takes up that prime retail space in a commercial zone. And so the city needs to really consider whether that's something they want in a commercial area. This property is unique in that this lot right here, while it's commercial, has 0 frontage on an arterial road. So the fact that we're preserving all of these lots up here for commercial right now, I mean, this is Ziggy's, this is a Walgreens, and then the Naughty Pine Liquor and Domino's Pizza are going in right here, and they're approved. This is the Belfiore development, and they've been approved as well for a matching building right here. So there's an access easement that provides all along through the Hunters Reserve Center right here, access to all properties. There's an access easement here in the original Hunters Reserve plat and right here. Now, because during the replat, we'd like this lot to be accessed by right-of-way, we'll have to figure that out some way through the replatting process, whether we dedicate a 30 feet right here so that instead of, easement, that's actual right-of-way, or we do it right here or here. Any of those options are acceptable to provide right-of-way access to the property. The right-of-way access to the property doesn't necessarily have to be the main entrance to the property. So that can be via an access easement, as so long as it's paved, and we are requiring, you'll see as one of the conditions of approval on the resolution, that if they end up using this and it's not the right-of-way, it stays just as the access easement, that the applicant obtain a maintenance agreement with that property owner, because the property owner, we did receive a letter from them. They just put in the brand new road right there, and they want to make sure that there's a maintenance agreement in place if that the use of the road is shared, which seems fair, and the city was already thinking about that. The next criteria is that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The use of a property for mini storage is allowed in the C3 zone district. And the master plan obviously identifies this area for commercial uses. That's how it got changed to commercial zoning. Our conditions of approval address some drainage and fire safety concerns that were identified on the property. Right now, this entire half of the remainder property is in a drainage easement, and then there's a drainage feature right here for the Hunter's Reserve, the whole development. So it does sort of flow, from there's a drainage right here, and then there's kind of one here that go to this property. But the mini storage does cover a lot of ground, so that goes over the expected coverage, in that original drainage report. So the drainage so our engineer who reviewed this site proposed that they put in like an extra water quality or something to slow the water down right in this bottom corner. The engineer also proposed, other alternatives as well, something to address just how much of the ground gets covered in a mini storage facility, to make sure that it complies with the overall drainage plan, and that none of that existing system is compromised by the lot coverage in that one lot. The fire district also sent in a referral that there is one fire hydrant right here, and they just said with mini storage units, sometimes people put things in storage units that they're not supposed to, and every now and then the fire department has to come out. They were not. The fire district did say all the lanes were designed properly. They can get their trucks around all those lanes, so that's a good thing. They did ask that there be another fire hydrant somewhere there as well, because taking it all the way down there is just too far to the other side of the site. So that's one of the conditions of approval that you'll see. And just because this site plan hasn't been updated since it was submitted to us not that long ago, you'll see on the conditions of approval a request to put our standard development standards on the site plan itself. So I think it's a good opportunity to see what those are if you don't zoom into the big site plan when you get it. Often an applicant will already put those development standards on a map before it comes to you, and that's why you don't see it in your resolution. So you can see what things we say, such as approval of this plan may create that vested property right. If they sell it to someone else, they can still have a mini storage, which makes sense. And then it calls out that the special use permit was for mini storage, not for a recycling center or anything else. And then, it calls out that it has to meet any state, local, federal rules. It just has some reminders in there, like they have to meet fire rules, building rules. We did put a note on here that the 2 fire hydrants are required, and some of the other fire district requirements saying that they couldn't have raised sidewalks or traffic calming devices, like speed bumps, basically. And then it mentions that the design of the building will have to meet our architectural standards, and that all light shall be shielded and not spill onto adjacent properties, and it has to adhere to the International Dark Sky Standards. And then we have that the landscaping and irrigation shall be installed prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy. So our code allows for us to not include landscaping in a development agreement. If we put a note like this, it says, as long as you get it in before your certificate of occupancy, you're golden. And then the code even offers an option for them to make a site improvements agreement with us at that time. If they're like, oh, you know what, it's January, we're not going to put in our landscaping right now, then they can come to us at that point and request an agreement. It just kind of saves them from having to bond some extra money up front for landscaping, and gives them a chance to get it in of their own accord while they're developing the site. We just have normal nuisance, paving of parking, and some regular MS4 compliance statements in there. Oh, kind of nice to see what those are. Sometimes they're just in tiny print when you see the site plan. That is the end of my presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions if you have any on this special use permit request.
Thank you. Commissioners, does anyone have questions for staff?
I do. Just really quick for some clarification, and it's probably just because I'm not used to this as much, but can you talk again, and this has less to do necessarily with this application, so I don't mean to distract from what we're trying to do here, with the easement and the right-of-way and access to this property. I guess the question is, how is the city going to decide what is best?
So we'd like to leave it up to the applicant. The state requires that every lot we create, we have to prove that they have unobstructed access to right-of-way. And a lot of cities like to take that a step further and say we don't feel comfortable creating any lots unless they have direct access to right-of-way. And that comes from a long history of easements going bad. You have an agreement with someone with an easement to cross their property, and they decide one day they don't care if you have an easement, and they just block it off or something like that. It becomes a little bit of a legal nightmare, civil nightmare. So when we're doing replats like this that create a lot that looks like it's going to be landlocked, even though it has access easements. So there's an easement, across the Walgreens and across the Ziggy's and across this Belfiore property. Right now it crosses 3 properties to get there, and then there's another access easement right here that so they have the legal right to access this property from the plat. But because it's an easement, there's just that little bit of uneasiness that comes to staff that we would really like that to be actual right-of-way, actual public right-of-way where no one's questioning whether or not you have the right to cross. Mm-hmm. And then it's also non-exclusive if it's right-of-way. Anybody can cross that. So you can't just say, well, you can, but Joe can't. So we would like it to be right-of-way. So this plat, even though it's just getting developed now, was actually done in the 90s. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the 90s. So I'm sure at that time they were saying, an access easement's fine. Let's not make it right-of-way. It's, that way we'd have to actually dedicate it or, work out an agreement or something. And, but we're not entirely comfortable with that right now. So.
Okay.
I don't know if that helped or not.
Yeah. Well enough. I just think about, there's some neighborhoods in Greeley that, like, you know, on maps, it shows they go through. And then there's pillars that shut the access off. And I don't know if that's the same thing. It looks like they should go through, or there's a gate that's constantly locked, and it's like, I don't know, I guess.
That's tricky. I know for some of the cases where I've been involved with that, it's been because the right-of-way wasn't, well, a few different reasons. Sometimes they'll do that just simply to block off their neighborhood, where they had to put it in where a fire department can get through it. So they said, oh, it's just an emergency access, but we don't want everybody using it. So the public can get in from either side, but they can't get across. They're trying to stop traffic or slow them down. Another reason, I know in my own neighborhood, there's one of those, but that's because the right-of-way is too narrow to be considered a legal street these days. And so the road right on the other side is the right width, and you can go up and down, but they just, they decided it wasn't big enough to have the road go through anymore, so they closed it off.
Okay.
I had a question about landscaping. So this is, I've heard this before, where landscaping, those kind of things are going to be done afterwards. We're going to improve everything. We're leaving it up to you to make sure that you come in, you know, you've agreed to do this landscaping improvement. We assume you're going to do it. Are there provisions if that isn't done?
Let me find it so I don't get it wrong. So the code assumes that the landscaping will be put in by the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Now, it also gives, I'm trying to find it here so I'm not misquoting. It also gives a way to what happens if that's not possible. Come on, I know you're in here. I'm looking to see if there's an actual time. Okay, wait, that's a single family home. Let me find the non-residential. Multifamily, non-residential. Okay. So it says the city shall not issue building permits for new non-residential buildings until a landscaping plan has been approved, which in this case, if we approve this special use permit, it includes a landscape plan that we would approve. The city staff may at its discretion issue building permits with the condition that a landscape and irrigation plan has been approved prior to issuance of occupancy. If weather conditions do not allow for installation of the landscaping at the time the certificate of occupancy is requested, or if city staff has other reason to believe that immediate installation of landscaping would jeopardize its viability, such as in the case where additional buildings are yet to be constructed on the same lot, or the construction traffic would tear it up. City staff may issue the certificate if the applicant provides both cost estimate from a local landscaping company for the cost of materials and labor to be reviewed and approved by the city, and a letter of credit in the amount of 125% of the cost estimate. All landscaping improvements shall be accepted for the city and in compliance with an approved landscaping plan. And then, so if we're going straight off of that, it doesn't, the time frame would be included in that agreement, but it's not specified here. What we fall back to for our development agreements like this, an agreement, is the vested property rights law in Colorado. Like when the code doesn't specify a time frame, the vested property rights law says that if we approve a plan, then you have 3 years to build it out, or you can lose your right that you were approved for. So we would make that agreement up to 3 years. For landscaping, it's usually a year.
Okay.
To make sure they have all the growing seasons.
Is that what happened with Stampede Truck Stop? I just know that we were caught in some kind of limbo for many years over landscaping that was supposed to be put in, and it was not, and they finally just said, we don't care anymore.
I don't actually know.
Okay.
Randy, do you know?
Okay. And then as far as the water, you were talking about an improved drainage at that one corner. When is that decided? Is that to upgrade the drainage or not?
So that would have to be prior to recording the map. Now, there's one thing that you could do, right? The way I wrote your resolution draft was that it says prior to recording the special use permit map.
Okay.
You could change that to say prior to your city council hearing, you need to address this issue, which would probably be more in line with what city council would like it addressed before they hear the case. I've also seen maybe they would, if this went to them and it hadn't been addressed, they may continue their approval until it's addressed. Or if they're pretty sure that the applicant will figure it out, many other jurisdictions I've worked in have just approved it with the condition that they fix the problem before it gets recorded, on the plan before it gets recorded.
So that is going to be an incredibly concrete, heavy area there. And the multiplying effect of water drainage is concerning. But
yeah, the applicant did submit a drainage plan, a drainage report with it that it appears to be handled, but our engineers maybe wanted it tweaked a little bit.
okay.
I have one more question. Frequently pass this area. I've seen that it's vacant. I know that it's going to be eventually developed. There are hundreds of prairie dogs. So what happens with that? Because prairie dogs are different than a mouse, a bunny. They're a colonial, altruistic, social creature that can't just be bulldozed.
Right.
So what happens with that?
I mean, that's the classic Colorado development problem, right? According to the City of Evans code, if I remember it correctly, it's the property owner's responsibility to remove their prairie dog nuisance from the property, however that may be accomplished.
So we can conditionally approve this with the request that they're handled humanely and send that to city council to make the decision.
Yeah, you could ask that.
Okay? I don't have anything else.
Okay. Anything else for staff?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
The applicant is present and would be happy to answer any questions.
Am I saying that wrong?
I think you just say, is the applicant present? And
Is
then
the
they come up.
applicant present?
I'm gonna relook through the script.
Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commissioners. I appreciate your time tonight. My name is Jason Sherrill with Landmark. We're actually traditionally a home builder. We did actually some home building here in Evans in the early 2000s. So it's been a long time since we've been in this building, but we appreciate the opportunity to be back. We've owned the property for a number of years, so we're looking forward to improving the property and kind of maturing the property per our plan. I don't have any additional information. The staff did an excellent job, so you guys understand the project, the scope, what we intend to do. I can address maybe a couple of the questions I heard, if you'd like. As far as the right-of-way issue, we've developed over 30 years, multiple properties in northern Colorado. And a lot of our properties have access easements and not right-of-ways. As a home builder, we traditionally, we access right-of-ways, but within our projects, we do private drives. It allows us a lot more flexibility with our projects. And then the granted access is through an access easement, which is what we have here. So we do have an access easement. In my 30 years of developing properties, we've never had any issues with restrictions via our streets that we've developed with access easements. So still very confident that that's a reliable access point. As far as the right-of-way, that's a tough one for us because we don't control the property that would be required to establish a right-of-way. So really, we can't commit to any kind of right-of-way. We're very confident that the access easement will provide us the dedicated access for our potential users over the years. So that's our position. As far as landscaping, we're certainly willing to meet the code, where we often develop projects through the winters, and there's either some form of escrow agreement or letter of credit, as staff has described, and that's the best way. That's the traditional way to protect that the landscape will eventually be installed. We prefer to get it installed, prior to CO, but it really becomes dependent upon the weather. So if the weather allows, perfect. It's our preference. Last thing we want to do is have to worry about coming back. We want to get it done, when we're on the project, completing the property. As far as drainage, we have a civil engineer that prepared the drainage study and the grading plan, and my suggestion in that regard, which I'm sure the staff would have said the same thing, is that as we work through kind of land use approval, we'll ultimately be submitting final compliance drawings, and the staff will give us recommendations, and they'll tell us what we need to do, and we'll resubmit, and eventually we'll submit a set of drawings that the staff approves. So however you want to meter that and require that either prior to the next step, we understand, but traditionally, the final compliance happens after the approval of the land use. So, but whatever that needs to be, we're certainly willing to comply. So with that, I kind of maybe overstep my bounds. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I do. Maybe just a couple of comments first. It's really impressive with the lights, what you're able to
Yeah.
show. And I'm sure the surrounding neighbors, Mark will ask, but did you get anybody who is against this?
Well, I meant to mention that while I was giving my presentation, so thank you for asking me. I did have 2 neighbors call and ask for the set of plans, but I didn't receive any written comments or anything back from them. So I sent them the plans and explained the landscaping and the lighting and the fencing that was proposed. Who knows? Maybe they'll show up later. But I was pretty impressed with the lighting plan.
Yeah.
We develop a lot, where there's dark sky requirements, so it's familiar to us. So, we agree with the requirement and it makes sense to us.
Yeah. I'm sure the neighbors are going to be very excited not to have weeds growing through their fence too, with the landscaping.
Yeah, it's been, it's needed attention, and the best way to control those things, to control drainage and so forth, is to develop the property. Yeah. So we're happy to be here.
So it seems like there's a lot of things specific to this property that need to be done that require a lot of work. So I guess the question would be, how do you, and maybe more just for my curiosity, how do you determine the need in this area? So there's another storage unit down 37th, and I'm not indicating at all that this is an overpopulation of a storage facility, but how do you know? They just turned over, and I know nothing about the transition, whether they weren't doing well or they were just doing so well that somebody wanted to buy their business, or what? How do you determine this is the spot, this is where you want to be?
There's probably wasn't as much science as you think. The reality is, we think it's the perfect use for this location, and when I say that, for this particular piece of property, given that it's kind of tucked in and it doesn't really have, from our perspective, retail value. Yeah. Because of its location. The stuff along the frontage, along 37, perfect location for retail. As a home builder, we're certainly keyed in on the metric of the number of units that are showing up in Northern Colorado. I've been in Northern Colorado for decades, and it's, there's just a lot of people moving here. That in and of itself just generates the demand for storage, right? Houses are getting smaller, but people still have stuff. And so we just think it's a great opportunity to create a really high-quality storage facility close in to where the residents are, as opposed to on the edge of town where people are driving to. This is where people want to be, right? They don't want to drive for 30 minutes to find storage, just like the facility you discussed. I don't know the history of it, but this is what I think the market demands, and so we're happy to hopefully develop that opportunity.
Okay. As you said, housing land is becoming less and less available. This can't be the first time that you've encountered prairie dogs.
Right.
Have you ever done anything, any kind of agreement where you don't just plow over them.
Yeah, we've never plowed over them. I mean, that's, it's just not what, I don't know anybody that really does that anymore, but there are mechanisms where you can actually vacuum them up in a sensitive way and then relocate them. So we're up for doing what is necessary, and certainly whatever the code requires.
Doesn't sound like the code requires much, so I feel like for my peace of mind and maybe that of others too, just something conditionally approved that they're surely taken care of, just because they've been a landmark in the city of Evans or something.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but yes. they have
I'll also
been a
say
landmark.
that and the removal of prairie, you get a lot of raptors flying around the area, and when you're shrinking their real estate even more. You don't own the parcel adjacent, do you?
I do.
And I'm sure you plan to develop that as well. So these prairie dogs will soon have absolutely nowhere to go. I guess maybe I'd have to do some more personal research to see these companies or whoever you contract to hire to relocate them. Where are these guys going?
I couldn't tell you. We haven't had to do it for a while. It's probably been 10 years since we've had to relocate them. Just because where we've been developing, the previous guy, whatever, just activity, they naturally kind of moved on. So we just haven't had to deal with it for a while. But
The other thing is the property just to the west is farmland, and you're not having prairie dogs. That wasn't a concern when approving that development, that there'd be prairie dogs making a home in a farm field. Unfortunately, this is like the speck in the middle of Evans where they are left.
I'll put them on the other property over there. If that's
Yeah, I'm sure.
Probably wouldn't go for
Give
so
them
long.
to, what is it, First National Bank?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm up for doing, the right thing. I really prefer not it to be a condition, but if that's what you feel like you need to do, I mean, we're a local home builder. I mean, we pride ourselves in doing the right thing. So, I mean, I can commit to you that we'll do whatever, we can in regard to the most civil way to remove them. I just don't want to commit to something without really knowing what that means, because it's been a while since we've had to do it. So, I'll let you guys figure out what that language sounds like, but, I guess that's what
Appreciate
I
that.
can offer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and that brings me to my question, or what I was saying about the concrete, that I've noticed with Ziggy's and Walgreens, and I mean, it is becoming just almost solid concrete. Then this area, the removal of all the raptor food, and we have some new bald eagles here that have come down on the river, and this is getting to be a real concern. We don't have anywhere for the water to really drain without collecting it in our storm sewers and concentrating and then dumping it into the rivers. And I'm just, this isn't the place to address it. I understand that, but as a builder and developer, these are the things that impact the quality of life in Evans. They're the little subtle, these become great big heat islands. And without any urban forest at all over these areas, that property's just gonna cook. And I'm wondering, can we put solar on top of the storage and turn that into our solar field as well? I don't know. But is there, I don't know if there's a way to break that up with a storage facility to allow for any kind of shading, any kind of putting trees in there anywhere?
We're not, the issue with adding kind of vegetation internally, it just ends up becoming a maintenance issue.
Right.
When you're trying to be efficient with storage. I mean, we're certainly have a lot of landscaping. If you study the landscape plan,
right,
we have a significant amount of vegetation around the perimeter. So, we're meeting, I think, beyond code, the requirement, or at least meeting code. So
right.
I think that's what we need to do, and so that's what we're asked to do, and that's what we're doing. I know it's not the answer you're looking for. But
no, I just don't know where is the appropriate place to step in with some of these things. I feel like I'm stepping in with these questions way after the fact. And that's my problem to work out.
No, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
I'm not ignoring it, but.
No.
I guess the nature of a storage facility is this is what it looks like. And then
Right.
what we're trying to do is make sure that we over-deliver on what that looks like with like the perimeter buffer yards,
Sure.
the lighting,
Yeah.
the architecture, just the look and feel. So to some degree, our Northern Colorado is urbanizing, like you said, and creating this controlled environment, getting rid of the weeds. I mean, that's one of the best things that we can do to improve the landscape, the overall fabric of the communities. And I think to some degree, improving a property that is kind of aged a little too long and, just been a weed fest and home for prairie dogs, this to some degree is solving that problem.
That's all the questions I have.
I have a question on the, what appears to be the southeast border, the angular border. Is there going to be any sort of wall there separating the facility from the neighborhood?
There'll be a fence. There is some fencing there now, and so I can't remember if we're putting new fencing up. You probably don't know.
I know, I'm trying to remember.
Is it going to be taller than normal, like more than a 6-foot fence, or is it going to be what matches the neighborhood? Because that's.
Yeah, I apologize. I believe,
I'm not sure.
I don't think it really shows here, but I apologize. I don't know the answer to that question, but I can certainly get the answer to that question.
And then to the west, that's where
The whole project will be fenced.
west of the facility, that's where the new, I'm going to ask you this, Angela, that's where the new development is, isn't it? It's not
The Liberty
farmland
Drive.
anymore.
It will be developed west
Oh.
of 35th.
It's being developed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
that's right now.
They broke ground there a few weeks ago.
yeah, so Liberty Draw, that first phase that was already approved is going in right here. And then they have an emergency access that goes down here at Prairie View that will eventually, curve up around that property that we already discussed this evening. So it kind of makes a semicircle right here, or a quarter circle.
Right.
Yeah, so the Liberty Draw, this piece right here is not part of Liberty Draw, but all of this is.
Can you zoom in on the landscape plan? Because I think I'm recalling now.
There's a way to do it in PowerPoint.
Control and mouse scroll.
It's,
Because there's, if I can, so to the east, we're installing the fencing because that's vacant ground. And then really it's those residents do have fencing, but if I recall in our landscape plan, there's our fencing and then a buffer yard and then their fence.
But your fencing will be solid, or is it going to be like chain link?
Solid. I don't know if you can't, I mean.
I
that's okay,
know,
but-
that was as far as we could get it.
So
I'm looking through.
what is that little strip there,
It's
between
a
the
part
blue?
of that detention pond.
That-
Below the blue line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is detention pond there?
Yes.
Okay. That will have some open space though around it, won't it? Just a,
Yes, so as far as the Hunter's Reserve, when the whole development was made, there's a certain portion that's reserved as open space. Commercial's a little different because it doesn't require, I think each property could be covered 85% of the property, but then you look at the whole site and you generally do site drainage design, and so that's why there's this detention area down here. And I think this was originally an outlot. This development also included all of this residential development as well when it was first made. So these properties all sort of drain to this detention pond here.
and now these properties that are being developed will also drain into that retention pond.
Yes. So that
Okay.
original drainage report had to show that this entire drainage basin could support it. And then those detention ponds, they have to release at historic rates, so that the water leaving the property can't be higher in like velocity or in volume than what would be historically leaving the property. The thing that's different is that it's leaving the property all at one point. It drains into this, the ditch that goes along 35th Avenue and goes south from there.
Any further questions from commissioners? All right, thank you. Well, I don't know whether I should say this, but anybody in the audience want to make a statement? Questions?
You have to say.
No? Thank you. At this time, public comment will be closed. And staff, any further questions or comment?
I would just comment that you look at the resolution and make sure that you're okay with the way that I've worded those conditions. They would be right up from there. The PrimeGov doesn't do formatting super great, but if you go up even just a little bit further, so the way the resolution has the conditions will be similar to this, just formatted better. Do we have a copy of the resolution? That's okay. Yeah, there we go. So I've worded it so it says prior to recording this special use permit site plan. So then it's that the replat has to be approved and recorded. That's pretty standard, that before you put a special use permit on something, you have to make the lot that it's going on. And then the second, prior to recording the plan, is that those development standards be placed on the plan. Those are pretty standard, but you're also welcome. It's in your purview to always know that you can change any of those development standards. And if you go, I think, down to number 2, keep scrolling. So it says prior to construction, an executed road maintenance agreement for the proportional maintenance of Hunter's Reserve private access easements between the affected property owners shall be submitted. That was just our way of making sure that the other property owners who own the land with the improved road their interests are taken care of. If there's any other conditions you wanted to add, this would be the place to do it. Or I just wanted to confirm that you're okay with the way that I've worded that prior to construction and prior to special use permit plan. You could say that those first things need to be addressed prior to the city council hearing. And that might even be my recommendation.
Okay. Can we just say right now then that if that is your recommendation, that when we recommend approval, that is implied?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You can say as, with the changes as recommended by staff.
Okay.
No further comments or?
Amongst us or from?
Staff.
Okay. I think you're done, right?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you have any discussion?
We should.
Yeah,
I gotta say, I'm less concerned about the water than you are, because
Yeah.
I've gotta say, the engineers are there for a reason.
right. It's my confidence.
And also the applicant has nothing to do with that.
No, I understand that. I wanted to clarify something. When you said that retention pond was spec'd, that was based on that entire chunk of land, including the development right there, drainage of all that area.
Yes.
Okay, with concrete.
It included several percentages, different for the residential areas.
Right.
So it divided up the area into basins and said what the percentage of expected imperviousness was going to be for each of those basins. And on the commercial areas, I believe it was developed for that entire commercial area can be covered up to 71 or 72%. So if this site takes more of that, the overall average of that drainage basin has to stay at 70 whatever percent for the commercial area to comply with the original drainage report. And if it doesn't, then they need to modify the drainage system to comply. Our drainage engineer was concerned that the individual lot itself didn't comply with the 70 whatever percent it said in the original drainage report. But the engineer who submitted the drainage report made the argument that the overall drainage still complied with the 70 whatever percent was originally contemplated by the original drainage plan for the subdivision.
Okay, so there was a concern, and it sounds like there was a concern, and it was discussed amongst the engineers. They came up with okay.
And I think they're still debating it. I don't know that we've come to an agreement with the applicant on that yet.
But they're
and
on
that's why it's a condition. Yeah.
Okay,
So can we discuss, maybe with the help of staff, I know that it's the applicant's preference not to have anything included in our recommendation. I feel inclined as a representative of the community, though, to make sure that this concern is brought before City Council so that City Council is ultimately the ones that can decide, is this an issue? Does it make sense? Is this accurately represented as a concern? And is this something that, I don't know that Evans has ever done anything like this before. You said that you haven't handled this in 10 years. So just that being the fact, I'm sure a whole lot has changed. And I don't want to incur a high cost on the applicant. That is not what I want.
No, not at all.
And especially with the applicant owning the other piece of land, I'd hate to deter them wanting to develop it further, because they know that means that they're going to have to pay more to remove some prairie dogs that are defined as a nuisance in a lot of language.
Right. As a representative of the community, and I appreciate all the concerns of putting more onus on the developer to more cost onto the developer. But at the same time, I can see the prairie dogs becoming a huge flashpoint in if it's
so
I'm having a difficult time sorting out my thoughts right now, and I apologize for that. I'm running on about
Angela,
3 hours of sleep.
I was just going to ask you, what experience do you have could you make a recommendation to us based on what we're saying, how we could adjust this? Is there any compromise that we can work out to make sure that this is something that is presented before City Council as a legitimate concern of ours?
If you want to present it to City Council, I do suggest that you put something in the resolution. If they don't like it, or they want to handle it just with, a handshake or trust, then they can remove it from the final resolution, their resolution of approval. But this is your recommendation to them. So anything that you want them to see, I would put on there.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Mandy to scroll down to the conditions part of the actual resolution that you'd be sending to City Council, so that your comments are accurately conveyed. So in this section 2 here, that's where the conditions actually are. So you'll see it says the development standards in Exhibit A, because there's so many of them, I didn't put them on the, I put them in the back. The drainage concerns identified, adequate fire suppression, those fire hydrants I mentioned. And then scroll up just a little bit more. That we get the sign plan, that's pretty standard, number 4. Number 5, the replat recorded. And then B, prior to construction. You could add, we could make prior to construction be a colon, and then you could have an executed road maintenance agreement be number 1, like B1. And then you could say B2, that the prairie dog colony is humanely removed from the property, or however you'd like to word that.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would say that, because the drainage concerns are already,
And it's coming from a staff recommendation.
yeah,
too.
no, so
So let's do that,
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely, 100%.
And
Yeah.
aside from them they're going to be removed.
Right.
They have to be moved somewhere,
Right.
somehow, if it's going to be done humanely.
Right. No, I agree. I'm just, like I said, I'm struggling with that bigger picture with our land use overall in the city, because we are rapidly
Well, and you said that maybe it's too
losing.
late, but this is the perfect time to have you on the planning commission, because we're redoing land use code. So we
yeah.
have every ability now to give our input and say where we think things should be. How you can steer this. Is a great time for you to be on this commission.
Okay. My concern is that we're losing so much of any
This is a
kind of
global
open.
issue.
Yeah, well, I know, but locally, we're losing a lot.
Yeah.
We're absolutely losing a lot, and with the river here and having that river basin, that corridor is just getting narrower and narrower, and without some kind of buffer around it, there isn't enough to support anything on the river. And that we have 6 prairie dog colonies now within, I think, down, so it would be about 27 miles up and down the river through Evans on what is it, north and south, yeah, or east and west. And we meander in there, but we're losing a lot, and we need to develop. We need to continue to develop. I just would like to see us develop wisely. I think that's what we all want, and I don't want to see us get into a situation where I feel like nobody remembers the Stampede truck stop debacle, but they were supposed to landscape and develop that entire corner, and they never did. They never did. They got into a big argument over it, and it just sat there in noxious weed city. It was really, really bad.
Let's come to a resolution so
Okay.
that we stop taking up the applicant's time.
Yeah,
too.
sorry.
We really
Okay.
appreciate you sticking through here the whole time,
Right.
answering all our questions. This was a long one. So it sounds like we would like to add that amendment with your recommendation as point A, and then our recommendation
As B.
that we would like the developer to proceed with humane removal of the prairie dogs. If that sounds, is humane not even the right word? Because you can euthanize a dog and that's humane, right?
Well, and I
Ideally,
think,
they're not being killed, is
no,
the
I
point,
think
right?
I think humane is the appropriate term, because you can't always not kill. That's the
Okay,
truth.
they're
You
not
can-
being bulldozed in their burrows, I can accept that.
Right, and we're not using chemical or poisons that our pets can get to. I mean, you can gas them, you can vacuum them, but you're not going to ensure their survival when you vacuum
And you
them
know,
either.
even thinking about where you could bring them, there's not a prairie dog reserve You
Well,
can't
that's
just
just
bring
it.
animals and transfer animals around on property.
No, and the moment you disturb that colony, all the property owners all around are gonna start seeing some problems for a little while. Unless, because they won't establish another colony, but, you know, that'll be a transitory thing, but, yeah, I hate,
It's too bad the city of
Yeah.
Evans doesn't have greater open spaces that we could say, let's seed a prairie dog population.
yeah, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. It's a balance. It's a balance between development and our open space, and we're working at it, and it's just, but yeah, it's getting late, and we are taking up time, but we need, yeah, hash this out. Okay.
Okay, so there's no further discussion amongst us? No. Do we have,
Motion.
want to entertain a motion on the matter?
I move to approve Resolution 2023-06, recommending approval with conditions, the special use permit for mini storage for Landmark self-storage. Do we need to add?
With conditions and the included amendments, the attached amendments.
Is that what?
So just to confirm, you wanted to add the prairie dog colony shall be removed humanely from the property as condition B2. And then under A,
Drainage.
let's see actually, that means we need to add. So it would be A, prior to the city council hearing, the development standards shall be placed on the site plan, the drainage concerns identified shall be addressed, and the fire suppression shall be added to the plan. And then we'd have a B that says prior to recording the special use permit site plan, the special use permit site plan shall be submitted for recording and the replat shall be recorded. Then we would have a C, prior to construction, an executed road maintenance agreement for proportional, the executed road maintenance agreement, and then number 2 would be the prairie dog colony. So we'd have an A, B, and C.
Prior to special use permit site plan, prior to city council session, and then prior to construction.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. That makes sense.
And as long as you're okay with that, you can say as recommended by staff. I just wanted to make sure you knew what I was recommending.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving resolution 2023-06 with special conditions, affirm by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries. And that concludes our entertaining resolutions. Staff, do you have any items? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any staff items?
Oh, sorry. I did want to, I mentioned, I think, to maybe one or two of you, but you'll be getting invites to the Joint Planning Commission and City Council Land Use Code update work sessions. So be on the lookout for that. And then I also wanted to let you know that I've made a list here of things. We are getting a new city planner, so that's going to give me some more time. I'm excited to do some of the director jobs, such as providing training for you, if you'd like it. And then, I'm also considering, setting up, I know you've had in the past some different educational presentations or things that would help you do your job. So I'd like to be able to do that as well now. Be able to set aside time to do that. I'm really, really excited about that. So it's coming.
Good sign you up for everything.
Good. All right. We'll do it.
Okay, so our next scheduled meeting will be on May 23rd,
Yes.
6 p.m. Without any further discussion, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
Do I have to vote on
Smash it.
that?
Come on.
Do it. Yes. Yay.
I've never done that in my life.
What was that you asked?
So that's where we bring all this up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, part of it, right, because, I mean, the code's not